I see some people that are supposed to get back to me and haven't yet, but as Jerry said, we kind of pride ourselves as your one-stop shop. We've been down here for a couple of years now. We see the potential, we see the growth, and especially on the women's side. We want to hit our main goal in 2014-2015 season has been hit the women's game. We see the growth and we see the attention or lack thereof that you guys are getting. Someone mentioned back there, they were like, well, you got all the guys samples. On the team side, I don't have a lot of girl stuff because the girls' game is so specific. And for lack of a better term, the girls are usually picky with what they like. Guys' game, all the guys are wearing the same gloves. All the guys are wearing the same helmets. Girls, this girl wants one goggle, this girl wants the other goggle, and there's no way to really get uniformity. However, we can get you in the same color scheme, which is a big deal. The uniforms, we got sublimated, we've got Nike, Under Armour, anything you guys need. So wanted to make sure, I'm gonna be back there during lunch, so you guys feel free to come up, talk to me. I've got business cards. Let's chat a little bit and see if we can't get you geared up. All right, thanks.
Thank you, JJ. Hi everybody, welcome this morning. Thank you so much for coming out. I know this is such an exciting time of the year with all of us getting geared up for our seasons. It's nice to see all the different schools represented with your logos and how the sport has grown here in Georgia. And we're very fortunate to have 3 college coaches here this morning speaking to us. I'm not going to talk long because we're running close on time. We want each of our coaches to have time to speak. They're each going to speak about 40 minutes, and then we're going to have time for questions afterwards. We're not going to take bathroom breaks, so if you need to go in between, just go ahead and scoot on out that way. So we'll go we're from 9 till noon, and then we're going to break for lunch. That's when Coach Mead will speak from 12 to 1, and then the men's session is in the afternoon. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Eve Levinson, who is the coach at Mercer University in Macon, Georgia. Eve, come on up.
We're going to need to adjust this microphone. Yes, can you mostly see me? I know it's a tall podium, there's no step. Little side note, if you have a chance to ever see, or if you have watched in advance of this, when I did my press conference at Mercer, they actually had, they had a little step. You can see me kind of step up onto it because I was going to be on camera. So the many troubles of public speaking. But good morning, everybody. As Jillian said, my name is Eve Levinson. I'm the head coach at Mercer University. I don't know if any of you are here from Macon or the surrounding area. We're just getting started with some of our lacrosse. So just like Jillian said, I'm thrilled to see so many Georgia coaches. It's fantastic to be bringing the sport further along in the state, helping to build it and advance kind of our sport culture here. For our program in particular, as I always like to say, we are one of the few undefeated teams in Division I lacrosse. Which, it is funny, I still enjoy it, but we went 5-0 this fall, so there is some weight behind that statement. This is my 3rd year at the helm of this program, and each of those years, each of those semesters has held different goals, different challenges. But what I've learned through the whole process, and what I would like to speak with you about today, is how I went through the process of starting Mercer from scratch and gotten us ready to play this spring. I'm going to take you back a few years first. Okay? As a freshman in college, I had the privilege of learning what it truly meant to feel a team dynamic. Beyond the high fives, the dance parties, the friendships, all of those silly things that younger girls tend to do on teams, there's a deeper connection that every one of us as coaches has to make sure is fostered in order for us to grow as a team. Because of that, and because of how this happened with my college team, I will always hold a special place in my heart for the hidden conditioning of a well-designed scavenger hunt. We were split into 2 teams, and we raced not only around Penn's campus, but between West Philadelphia and downtown Philadelphia as well, which is a sizable distance. More than a couple of those clues in the scavenger hunt were arranged for the sole purpose of forcing a sprinted mile. As a former goalie, that sounded terrible. I wanted to help my team as much as I could, especially after all the various ways I've been trying to get involved as a freshman and make an impact on the field, but speed has never been my strongest suit. In some ways, I was also a little fearful because there was an upperclassman on my team who had always struck me as somewhat cliquey and was probably, if not definitely, in the best shape of anybody on the roster. I was pretty sure that I was going to be reprimanded throughout the entire scavenger hunt for holding us back. Now, the reason that I loved that day is because she didn't. Rather than take the easy way and criticize me, this particular girl stood up as a teammate and encouraged me. She kept me running. She pushed me, and the other girls on my team pushed me too. We knew that our whole group would lose if I fell behind, if anybody fell behind. But they handled motivating this new player in a way that made me want to work hard. We won the scavenger hunt that day. Whether you are an established coach or a new coach, some of you might be referees in here as well. Maybe you're playing. I don't know how the adult league system goes here, but I wish I could be a part of it. We've all been in situations where we've led or been led. Okay, that's a given. It's whatever circumstance you might have been in your life. But if you take a moment to reflect on some of the best leadership situations you were involved in, and if you can bear it, the worst ones, okay, we all cringe at those, you'll notice they have a handful of things in common. Okay, 3 that I've been able to identify. The first, well-defined priorities. Okay? You know exactly what this person values. The next are clearly communicated goals. And the third one is support to achieve these goals. Okay, 3 things. It's pretty straightforward. Now, to maintain your own sanity as a leader, and to ensure your players, or whoever it might be, will be willing to follow you, it really helps to have a roadmap. People like a target for their work. Reason to stay motivated, reason to give their full efforts. Doesn't matter if we're aiming for a single game, a season record, big presentation at work. I know plenty of you do lots of other things other than lacrosse. We all know that we need everybody involved to be moving in that same direction. In short, your job as a coach is the same. It's to decide who we are, what we can do, and how we're going to measure our success. So how do we do this? How do we make sure we keep our team moving in the positive direction that we as the coach have identified will allow us to be successful? Now, the most obvious example to me personally came about a few years ago. I had the opportunity to step up and become the interim head coach of the college team that I was working with at the time. Now, because this happens in the middle of the season, I was trying to be a good team player, and I initially felt the need to maintain a lot of the routines that the previous coach had been implementing all season. Let's just say it was awkward at first. We did everything as we've been doing all year. A lot of things that I had been a part of, that I had helped facilitate, but they weren't me. So putting me into the position of trying to run those things wasn't natural. My athletic director at the time, who is a fantastic leader, suggested that I instead run the team as I was comfortable doing. Implement my drills, my strategies, my personality. They were my team now. I only had to meet my own expectations. Here's the thing. It's really tempting to fall into this pattern of mimicking someone, even when we're not taking over in the middle of the season. We are all here, we're all doing what we do because we're passionate about coaching, we're passionate about lacrosse, we're eager to be successful, we're curious to learn more. Those are all really good things. We all read books, we all watch film, we all attend presentations, thank you. And most of the time, we're all looking for that magic formula that's going to help us win a championship. But every one of us in here has different personnel, different talents, and different starting points. What works for one program, whether it's mine or yours, your neighbors, either of the two coaches is going to come up here momentarily, may not work for somebody else in this very room. Some of the things that are going to allow some of you to be successful as coaches, relating to your players, running your drills, they're going to be really awkward for somebody else, just like those first couple of days were for me. Today I want to talk about some strategies and ideas with you so that you can feel prepared for the 2015 season and get yourself off to a good start so you can get your team off to a good start. When I was hired to lead the Bears, it was imperative that I define my values as a coach and identify the qualities that I would need to emphasize to build a successful program in the context of those values. Having played and worked for a number of coaches, I have a lot of models. And there were aspects of what some of these individuals did that I loved, I wanted to implement, I thought were genius. And there were others that I figured I'd be doing differently. You're not going to agree with everything that you hear at any coaching presentation, talking to any of your peers, any of that. It might just not be part of who you are. And where it gets tough to differentiate is sometimes that team is successful. Sometimes we see a coach succeeding using a strategy that we can't or we don't want to implement. That's okay. That may not be a part of your values. For some of you, winning the championship is the most important thing you can do this season. You're going to do anything in your power to get there. Others of you are just going to be happy if we have a great team dynamic and everybody's happy at the end of the season and we do well enough and everybody comes back next year. Okay? We're all in different places and that's okay. Whatever it is that's important to you, whatever it is that you're setting out to do this season, make it known. Write it down. Tell somebody. Tell your assistant, your athletic director, your significant other, your kids. Make it tangible. Make it something you can come back to. Because who you are as a coach really needs to be consistent. What you're going to go through with your team over the course of a season is going to have inevitable ups and downs. And they're going to look to you to be that calm in the storm. In year one of Mercer Lacrosse, it was just me. The values that I held dear, starting that program, were all I had to connect my day-to-day operations. The only details I could talk about when I took recruits on tours of campus, at least as far as lacrosse was related, were those values. The only foundation that I had to start anything were those values. Of course, for some of the people who came through, some of the families, some of the recruits, being able to just say, these are my values, this is what we're going to build, here's where we're going, was too nebulous. It was too uncertain for some of the people who came through and saw us. They loved the school, maybe they liked me, whatever it was. but we weren't competing for a year. On the other hand, the Bears, the others, were excited to start something new with me. To start something new in the setting that I had described we would be building this program. My values that I shared with them rang true to them, clicked with their own values. And that was the start of it. Giving the team an identity before there was even a team allowed me to focus my recruiting efforts, as well as give incoming players some sense of what they were getting themselves into with me. Okay? They couldn't watch a practice, they couldn't beat their teammates, just me. But talking about all of these things and actually putting them into practice are kind of different. At the beginning of every segment of the year, so fall and spring, okay, I hold a team meeting. It's not a session that leads into practice. It doesn't involve stick work or film or conditioning. Instead, we take some time to sit together, to meet, to talk about values, calendars, rules, the things that are going to guide us through that period of the year, and most of them beyond that. Usually I lead the bulk of it. Okay? But last January, what I decided to do, what was important for our team, was to turn a portion of it over to them. Now, this portion of the meeting was seeing where they stood, if their values really had clicked with my own, and where they wanted to take this program. Okay? We as coaches know that we can say all sorts of fluffy, wonderful, rah-rah motivational stuff, but if it doesn't work for the girls you are coaching, they're just words. I wanted to know what their values were, so I asked them. Asked them to make a list of all the words or concepts that were going to help us, that made up who they felt they were, who we were going to be for the future. Didn't just ask them for words, I asked them to clarify. I wrote some notes, gave those words weight, so that they weren't just something you'd find on Pinterest, no offense, funny little saying you might buy in a gift shop. No, this was us. These words had meanings. This is who we would be. In the end of this part of the meeting, we ended up with 6 commonalities, 6 root values that guide us. And I have to say that I was full of smiles the whole rest of that day because their list and mine were almost identical. Which means I've been doing my job. I found people to come play, to come be a part of this program who understood what I was talking about, who wanted to build something in that context as well. We all wanted to move in the same direction, even if we weren't going to be playing a game for a whole nother year. Plus, really, it's 13 months. First game's next week. Every conversation that we have goes back to those 6 values. Everything we do, how we define ourselves as a unit, the benchmarks we're working towards, they're all part of those values. Those 6 items that we defined are the framework for our success. We do know exactly what direction we are all trying to take this cart in. Now, as a native Philadelphian, I'm going to give you an example. I do my best to follow my beloved Eagles from afar, which is not easy, but we do our best. It's been an interesting couple of years since bringing on a new coach, Chip Kelly, who's coming from a college program. Okay, there's a lot of talk, oh, can he handle it? How's it going to be the same? It's going to be different. Will he be able to work with professional athletes? For 13 years in Philadelphia, there was a system in place that really emphasized our passing game and the wisdom, we'll call it, of our former head coach. Okay? Now, for those of you who aren't football fans, bear with me for a few moments. In comes this new leader, and suddenly the focus for this team changes almost entirely. The current Eagles have been recognized for what some consider to be too heavy an emphasis to place on team culture. Much of that because Coach Kelly made a statement mid-season that culture wins football. Culture will beat scheme every day. To many, the idea that you can ask professional athletes, or anybody really, to prioritize team dynamic seems a gargantuan, if not impossible task. Yet if you ask his players, it's this culture that has gotten the team back on track. Okay, and as a little side note, I think if we had a better secondary, we might even still be playing this weekend. But that's okay. Now, veteran tight end on the team, Brent Selleck, he's acknowledged that personnel changes were really a benefit even if they were unpopular. As much as people in the Philadelphia area, Philadelphia fans from afar, Cal Bears fans, might miss Deshaun Jackson, or question why you'd let a player like that go. You might look at your teams and think, oh, she's my second best player on the team. But what's she bringing to the team? The current players understand the reason behind the decision to let somebody like that go. One of the questions that Selleck raised earlier in the season was, without the right guys in the locker room, without having that trust in the guy next to you, how are you going to achieve what you want on the football field? In a radio interview on a local station, another one of the players, Malcolm Jenkins, hit the nail on the head. He verbalized the message that his coach had been sending the team since day one. There's other teams out there that have more talent than we do. But we know how to maximize our potential. We have a great locker room, and he, Kelly, is all about camaraderie in the locker room. Make sure that molds well, and about the culture, and making sure the culture goes above any one person. And I think that's what wins us games. As I said, perhaps a lot of you can relate to this idea. In emphasizing the small things that help build Coach Kelly's values, everyone who's still on the Eagles roster understands the goals. Those who didn't get on board were released. They were traded, maybe. Maybe they were just removed, cut from the team. And I know that a lot of you don't have that luxury. All right, some of you high school coaches are going, okay, why is she telling me this story about cutting players? But, okay, there's a point here. You can provide them guidance so that they can make good choices, so that they do understand the culture, they do understand how they're supposed to be fitting into it, so they don't take away from it. You have to let them know that there is a structure in place and that conflicting viewpoints, conflicting strategies aren't going to be tolerated. In 2 years, since Chip Kelly has established himself as a coach who demands and sees results, his staff and his players know his values, respect his reasoning. There are some bright seasons ahead, hopefully brighter than this one, as Kelly's culture creates a structure, shows them that there is a targeted approach. To paraphrase the film Field of Dreams, if you build your team culture, talent will come. Well, that all sounds great, doesn't it? Might as well be a Disney movie. Build the culture with the games here. You might be rolling your eyes at me, thinking, this is great for meetings, this is great for the pros, but what are we supposed to do in our high school, our youth, our club practices? How are we supposed to translate this into wins on the field with some frou-frou culture stuff? Your values need to drive your team. which means your values will drive your play. Only now, instead of maybe pushing a kid to see a tutor to achieve a certain GPA, you're the one drilling critical skills so your players can put forth their best efforts and hopefully help you win more than a few of those games. Now, if it were up to each of us, every girl on our teams would be both highly motivated and highly skilled in all areas of the game. Every last one. If you're lucky, as some of you probably are, you've got at least a couple of those players. You know who they are, the team knows who they are, okay? And that's great. But you need to get all the players on the roster where they need to be. You need to help achieve a cohesive effort. You have to be the one to set the focus. You're most likely familiar with the expression, jack of all trades, master of none. In order to create an atmosphere with your program in which your team can be the most successful, again, that's a term you're going to define for yourselves, but to be the most successful, you have to select particular points of emphasis. When you have new players, young players, nervous players, keeping them focused can help instill confidence in them. Here are a few examples from my own program. Okay? The Division I level, players understand that they are going to be playing and training year-round. And if they don't, they're in for a rude awakening, but year-round. Our girls receive summer packets and winter packets to help guide their preparation for these segments. Now, maybe as a high school coach, a lot of players are going to come to you out of shape or unprepared because you only get to see them for part of the year. Although with what's happening in the club scene, that's seeming like a smaller and smaller problem, but it might still be there. Perhaps you've given out packets before, met with your team before everybody went to finals or went home for winter break. Here's a packet, nobody does it. Just wasted all that time, all that paper. Have you ever thought about why they're not doing it? Okay, why they're not coming to you in shape or ready to go? Now put yourself in their shoes. Think back to when you were a teenager or even a really little kid. I don't know what ages we're all talking about, but would you have done it? Would you have been internally motivated to complete a task like that? To take weeks and weeks and run and maybe lift and work with your stick? And do you think every girl on your roster is going to be internally motivated to do it? You're not going to see a lot of goodness of the heart training. It's not going to happen. You might have some of these kids who go do some of the workouts on their own. Oh, I'm going to get started, and now it's the holidays, and I'm hanging out with my family, and we're going on vacation, and oh, my friend wants to go to the movies, and oh, so much for the running. Just as I mentioned previously, being able to communicate your goals allows others to meet them and surpass them. The first couple pages of each packet that I distribute have the same two things. One are instructions, and two are the details of our upcoming conditioning tests. If you, when you send out a packet, want result reports submitted by a certain time, you've got to tell them. If you want texts instead of emails, you've got to tell them. If you want them to stand on their head while they type out their responses to you and make sure that it's in by 3 p.m. on the second Tuesday of, tell them. They don't know. When you give them the direction, they're happy to meet you and follow it. When I lay out for them, hey, we're going to be doing a mile test. We're going to be running 110s. Maybe you want to see how many push-ups or pull-ups or sit-ups or whatever it is that they can do. Let them know. Because then what starts to happen is that packet becomes more of a roadmap for success than it does a punishment. Not only are they going to feel prepared for coming back to see you, but they're going to feel accomplished. Now, when it comes to practicing, you have to make sure that you have your expectations ready, not only for them, but for you and your coaching staff as well. Doesn't matter if you're a yelling coach or not, and all of you who are know who you are. But you all have pet peeves on the field, just as you do in life, just as I do. If I asked you right now to share them, you could probably do it pretty quickly, without a whole lot of thought going into it. Some of you might be cringing right now thinking about starting back up with these particular pet peeves in the near future. You might be the kind of person who goes home every night and sits down to dinner with your family or calls your friend on the phone and go, I can't believe that these kids just can't blank. There are going to be some players who will never get it. But there aren't many of them. Most of the girls on your teams want to please you. They don't want you to yell at them. They don't want you to be disappointed in them, and they definitely don't want you to bench them. Usually we get stuck on the communication portion of this problem. Rather than letting the team know what's important to you, we assume they know. Or we yell at them when they don't know. We have ideas, but we don't clue everybody in on what they are. What it will mean for these players to be successful in the framework we have in mind. Maybe they need to be in amazing shape for you. Maybe they need to have perfect stick skills or great lacrosse IQ that they see plays develop like they're in slow-mo. If they don't know what it is you want, they're going to try to be pretty good at everything. And if they're going to try to be pretty good at everything, then they're probably going to de-emphasize some of the things that you really value, which kind of defeats the whole point. Now, I've been following Coach Mike Krzyzewski and Duke men's basketball since I was a kid. And as much as that might make some of you cringe and recoil in disgust, please bear with me. There was just always something about the way that team played. Always something about them that connected with me. I never saw that floor slapping thing as obnoxious. And I really liked that they were fundamentally sound. Although as a kid, I probably didn't realize what that meant. Because of that, I've read a few of Coach K's books, because I was curious what his values are and how he prioritizes them. He primarily focuses on building relationships and encouraging leadership. And if you have any interest, or you're not a whatever fan you might be of and you can stomach it, some of these books are pretty interesting. But one of the things in The Gold Standard, which was one of his recent books related to coaching the men's Olympic team, was about practice and how important it is to maximize your time at practice. He says, practice is when a coach exercises the most control over the improvement of his or her team. When it is just you, your team, and the game. There is no one stopping you from having a good practice. This means you can't stop you from having a good practice by being ill-prepared, unenthusiastic, or unwilling to adjust. We all know that once the season starts, we have a limited number of days in which we can work with our teams to prepare for the season. And still, the way we schedule drills and move through each session with them, it's as though we have all the time in the world. We try to do too much every day. Maybe we allow ourselves and our team to be distracted. Whichever it is, we never really get to fully delve into a skill, never really get to master it. Sometimes we just move through reps way too slowly. And you know that if your team practiced like that, warmed up like that on game day, you would not approve. But we let them get away with it in practice. Maybe because we're too tired. Maybe because we've yelled at somebody too many times. Maybe because we just don't know what to do. But with all of these things, we then seem to wonder why we're not ready come games. And when we're not ready, we seem to have a tendency to blame our players, as though it's their fault that they didn't grasp our concepts quickly enough. They didn't give them any time. What were they supposed to do? When Mercer Lacrosse comes together for practice, we use the opportunity to improve on concepts and game scenarios, elements that require the full roster. That doesn't mean we ignore the building blocks, even at the collegiate level. What we actually do is spend the first few weeks of the year, okay, the beginning of the actual allowable season in September, we hold small group sessions. Extra practice to work on the fundamentals, talk about mechanics. We do the same thing throughout the year. Players need extra time on something, we bring them in. We target areas of need in smaller groups. And it's been helpful in a few ways. The most obvious is that in this context, we actually have time to provide one-on-one attention. If a girl is struggling, she can be the center of far less attention. Right? She wouldn't need to be corrected and reprimanded in front of all these people. Maybe it's 3 or 4 of her teammates. We can also fine-tune problem areas without grinding the whole team and the practice to a halt. Doing the basics with fewer people means fewer side conversations, which means less distraction. The technique's also useful because it really enforces the standard of skill expectation. If we've gone over how to throw the ball properly in one of these sessions, and some girl just keeps not throwing correctly, she's causing turnovers, maybe she has shoulder or elbow pain, whatever it is, it's pretty clear, or it should be clear to you, she's not putting in the extra work to master that skill. Now, is this somebody on your team who can't fix the problem? Or is this somebody who doesn't want to fix the problem? You probably know some of those kids. But either way, whichever it is, now we know how to manage this girl. Now we know how we have to work with her in an effort to bring her on board. Impacts the way you're going to have a conversation with her. For the most part, your team is going to grasp what you mean when you tell them to get their elbows up, to follow through on a throw, or to approach an attacker from a defensive angle. They'll know because you've just defined it. You've just created a language for them. You won't need to stop practices frequently because you can yell a single word or a phrase and everybody will know what you mean. Plus, and this is always the hope, right? They might get so tired of hearing you say the same thing over and over and over, as we all know you are too, that they might actually try to work on it. If you set the clear expectations, if you define for them what they need to do to be successful, give them the tools to be proficient. Give them the tools to be successful in your eyes. And that's what we're going for. I'm not going to stand up here and tell you how to win games or win a championship. Every team that does that does it a little differently. What we're talking about today is how you as a coach can demonstrate strong leadership. How you can gain the trust of your players by being the leader that they need. They'll want to follow you because you've outlined your plan. You've communicated to them what you need to do to execute it. And you've provided them with the opportunities to see that they're capable of being successful, of meeting and beating your goals. As with a lot of aspects of a field, coaching, that includes a lot of type A, competitive, hyper-analytical individuals. We all are, yes. We all have really personal views on things. We're all sure that that's going to be correct. That's the way to do it. Well, I heard so-and-so say, and that person won this or that, or, oh, they're coming up, and so that's how you do it. That's who we are. That's what our field is. Whether you are going to watch film and scout and prepare for each competitor that you're going to be facing, whether you say, you know what, we're going to focus on our team strategy, we're going to do what we know how to do, and we're going to play our game really well. If you know your team and you know your values, you can make that decision, and you can do so confidently. The critical step in making sure this works is turning your words and preparations into actions by fostering your team culture. Your players need to trust each other, and they need to trust you. You have to make sure you send them consistent messages. Emphasize your values, set rules and expectations, follow through. Because honestly, the way that you are going to manage game trouble, personal trouble, academic trouble, all kinds of trouble, is by getting comfortable with your discipline structure. We're going to talk about bonding elements in a little bit, but I don't want you to lose sight of how you're going to keep your team on track. What are you putting into place for the tougher times with your team? At this point, Mercer doesn't have captains for our team. That's coming up in a couple weeks, once we get the season going. With 20 freshmen and 6 sophomores, we needed all this time to get to know one another. Captains should be more than your highest scorers or your loudest individuals. They're going to be the representatives of your established identity, the intermediary voice in your program. The ones that you are going to turn to when issues come up that are going to be far better served being discussed within the team than coming from top down, from you. For now, what we have guiding our program is a leadership committee. Okay, and I'll thank Mindy McCord down at Jacksonville for that idea. Now, when we started the program going this year, I brought this up at our first team meeting in the fall. Told the girls to think about it, told them that I would be asking for volunteers in a couple days. Now we have a group of 8 players, 2 coaches, and we meet once a month to go through leadership strategies, to discuss its application. What we found are clear leaders who've stepped up and who've learned some things that seem to help them as they're going to be stepping into their role as captains. Not all 8 of these players are going to be captains, at the very least not all at the same time. But leadership in this capacity extends far beyond just going to a pregame meeting with the officials. It goes far beyond the letter C on your jersey. It's who you are, it's what you do, it's not your title. And knowing that disagreements are pretty likely to arise, especially with the groups of girls that we all have in our care, you not only need some of these girls to be able to come to you in faith that you aren't going to throw them under the bus when they come to you with sensitive matters, when they need you to address a problem on the team, but that you have a plan for what you're going to do when they come into the office. You are going to get calls about trouble. You're going to get that tug on your elbow asking you to meet after practice to talk about whatever it might be. They need you to be a mentor. They want to see what you do as a leader and how you're going to do it. Are you prepared to bench players who haven't met your standards? Let's go back to the Chip Kelly example. That player might be your best player, but is she causing a division in the team? Is she making everybody worse for it? Will your punishments fit the crimes that are committed, or are they going to follow a predetermined plan? What are you looking to convey in the management of these issues? Does your own behavior create a consistent response? And most importantly, do these players believe what you're saying and that you'll be guiding them fairly through the course of this season? Let me give you what may seem like a tangential example from this past fall. During a scrimmage, I was having what we'll call a bit of a disagreement with our officials about how the game was being officiated. Several times throughout the first half, the beginning of the second half, I tried to get their attention, and at this point I was doing so nicely, about the fact that opposing players backing into my defenders did not seem to me to constitute a push. But every time I requested a definition, each of those requests was ignored. Soon it became clear to me that not only was this going to be the definition of that rule for the remainder of the game, but that my players were getting angry. And sometimes you can use angry, right? We've probably done it once or twice. But we were bordering on retaliatory tactics at this point. So what did I do? I call a timeout. I have to redirect their energy from this thing I was upset about too. And I had to let them know that I was going to be bearing the burden of the officiating ire. As we started play back up again, I found myself migrating further onto the field. I noticed I was getting louder and louder with my critiques. And as it was happening, I could sense a change of mood amongst my team. We had found a shared focus. They knew that not only were we all in this together, but that my role with the team was not only about training them, it was about fighting alongside of them. I was sticking up for them. Throughout the last few months, we've found some more positive ways to bond as well. I've scheduled movie afternoons and get-to-know-you games, team dinners, holiday parties, mini golf. But a couple of the things that we've done beyond what we do on the field have stood out in particular. The first one I want to talk about is a newer part of the charitable element of what we do. We go out in the community to support our supporters. People are going to come out to games, they're going to tell us we did a great job when we're walking around downtown Macon. We want to help make their lives better too. Our girls donate their time to coach youth players. We've spent afternoons playing kickball at children's homes. We've handed out medals at the Special Olympics. We've had girls go to the Ronald McDonald House and help host a Halloween party for families who are there with sick children in the hospital. But this fall we added a team event where the whole team went to 2 Habitat for Humanity sites. I have to say we all loved getting our hands dirty. I mean, really dirty. We were laying sod. And it was a really exciting moment at the end of that day when we were told that our job had been completed. And we turned around and stopped to look and stood up from placing sod and watering things and wiping down the house to see that what had been a dirt lot only a few hours before was now a lawn. It was covered in sod. This home we were working on was now that much closer to being livable. It's really great to see your girls' joy after they score a big goal or win a big game. Okay? Knowing that they have worked together, that they've put the effort together to execute a plan. But let me tell you, seeing them celebrate what they did together in service of another, that was a whole lot more fulfilling. But it's not all work at Mercer Lacrosse. Maybe you can tell. I try to tell a lot of jokes. The girls know they're not good. I don't need laughs. It's okay. But we all seek ways to generate competition when we are in preseason practices or when we're in losing seasons. Something that we've been doing at Mercer for the last year and a half are what we call the black and orange games. The coaches, on our own, we split the roster into 2 teams. Players stay on their team for the entirety of their career. Last year we asked the girls to name the teams, so we have the Black Anxiety, and the Cheese Balls. So, you know, crazy team names, but they work. Right now, Black Anxiety is ahead. There have been days dedicated to competitions. There have been trophies that have been awarded to the victors. There have been lacrosse challenges. There have been silly team ones. Both of the last 2 years, we asked the girls to bring in costumes for somebody else. Let me tell you, that's a real riot if you coach a fall sport. They also ran their scavenger hunt in their costumes. That was good too. They get all riled up for everything we do. They hear we're doing black and orange games. They love it. They're ready to go. They want to know what the competition is, and they get competitive. They're really proud of their unit, even if it's named the Black Anxiety or the Cheese Balls. I can see the benefit of grouping them in atypical ways, because when you play a game that puts 12 people on the field, each one of them has to be comfortable playing with everybody else. You can capitalize on your natural pairings. The two girls were always assisting and scoring, and it seems natural that the ball always ends up in the back of the field. But there are going to be yellow cards, and we hope not, but there are going to be injuries. Sometimes you're just going to have to substitute somebody, for whatever reason. In those situations, variety is going to be a whole lot more powerful. When your opponent double teams or face guards your top players, who do you count on, and who can your players count on to get that job done? Hopefully the values that you've been working to instill reflect that there is no room for the kind of girl drama that would isolate somebody because she's not in that top tier. Fostering a competitive spirit does not mean you're holding a popularity contest. Push them to get to know one another. All of them to get to know all of them. Push them to compete against one another. But then when they do, when they accomplish things together, help them cherish what it means to have accomplished that task as a unit. Now, I'm happy to say that on the precipice of our first competition season, we've shown a lot of development in the tasks that I talked about today. Our players attended blitz, ran their own scrimmages, while we as coaches were away recruiting in November. They took their study breaks, they went to the gym together. They even asked us to turn the lights on during off hours so they could get out onto the field and keep playing. They understand how much work is still left to do and how much effort and commitment on their part it will require to get that job done, to put some wins on the board. It's been a joy to watch the program grow. Okay, it is my baby. Right? To see it go from a concept of sitting in an office hoping one day to get to play games, to now being on the brink of competition. It's been exciting to see the development of 26 girls as players and people. And not every moment has been as clearly defined or as perpetually sunny as, oh, maybe I made them out to be. But as we prepare to take the field in our pristine uniforms, we know that we've had some bumps along the way and that we've survived them. We're realizing as a unit that we can make it through good and bad together. Come Monday, we begin yet another season of Mercer Lacrosse. This one will be just as unique as everyone that came before it. We have goals and expectations laid out. We have a practice plan outlined. We have gear, a schedule. We have eager participants. Everything you might think we'd need to be successful. Now I know what that means for us. I know that our family understands how to meet the expectations and uphold our values. I trust that the work that I've put in up to this point will come to fruition. And I hope that in thinking through some of these things today, you have some ideas going into your season to make it an even better one. Because I wish you the best in establishing for your team the culture that's going to allow you to approach your season with the same kind of optimism that I have standing here today. Thank thank you all for coming, for braving the cold in the early morning, and I hope you all have a great 2015 season. Thank you.
To keep on track here. So does anybody have a question for Eve? I'll let like that.
Yes?
Are the Eagles going to get a defense?
I hope so. Change the front office structure and a lot of things can happen. So when you let your head coach have a say in who you want to bring in, hopefully you find the right people to fit into that culture and that scheme. Okay, which is a lot about what we as college coaches do as far as recruiting. I think we're close. Thank you. Yes.
What's the biggest difference? You're from a Philly area, right?
That's okay. We'll get you another.
What's the biggest difference you see between lacrosse in the cradle and lacrosse and what you see now?
I think the biggest difference is just exposure to it. I started playing lacrosse at 10, and some of my friends had already been playing for a year or two. Camps that I went to, like general overnight camps where we did art and theater as well as sports, and all, we had lacrosse all the way through. When I walked through my high school hallways, I saw team pictures of the lacrosse team in their plaid kilts. Does anybody still wear those? The plaid kilts with the 3 buttons? We did in high school. We saw team pictures from the 70s, from the 60s. Okay, so girls who I played with, their moms had played lacrosse. Some of them, even their grandmothers might have played, but that's a little more iffy. It's just more natural. And what I'm seeing in Macon, we are starting to have some varsity programs at the high school level, and we are in year 2, I believe, of our club team. Okay. They just aren't really examples. You've got a lot of these kids who think it sounds fun, but I have a track meet the same day we have practice, so see you later. Oh, I do soccer in the spring, so this sounds really great, but I can only do it in the fall. Okay, and so the culture hasn't turned over to make lacrosse enough of the community that people are going, oh, I can go to college and play lacrosse instead of I can play soccer, softball, track, basketball. Lacrosse is still growing in that capacity, but you guys are, doing your part. And if you're coaching high school teams, I'd say even more so than club teams, get out into the community. Go find out when your local club team is practicing. Go do events, whether they are community service events, whether they're just fun things that you do. All these little girls are going to start to see like, oh, look at those big, cool high school girls. I want to be like them. And in a few years, you'll have a much stronger pool of players to come and play for your high school.
I was wondering, I was interested in that black and orange team that you did. I wanted to know how you took that.
Basically what we do is we try to make sure that regardless of what activity we're doing, whether we are running a full field scrimmage, whether we are coming up with Halloween costumes, whether we're having a water balloon toss, a race, whatever it is, that there is a balanced distribution of skill. So you all know who your fastest players are. Okay? Let's say you've got 2 of them who are just leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else. They are on different teams. Let's say you've got 2 go-to goal scorers. Let's say you have 2 players who really just aren't getting it. Okay? And in that way, they'll be able to kind of help each other and learn from each other. I'll be here throughout the day and I think during lunch, so if you have any other questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. But again, thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of the sessions.
Someone was asking us about getting out of the community University. We have so many college programs now in the area. Mercer, Lacrosse, Georgia, Georgia Tech. Get out and use those good colleges as a stepping stone for your community, get your kids to see the higher level. All right, next up we have John Sung from Mercer University in Rock Hill, South Carolina.
How you guys doing today? You guys doing all right? Hopefully we're all awake still Saturday morning. I'm not going to use the mic. I'll just use my coaching voice. My name is John Sung. I'm the head women's lacrosse coach at Mercer University. We are now starting our third season. Our first season, we were the best first-year program in Division I, finishing with a winning record over USC, California. That's USC that we all know. Who else was there? Marquette, Coastal Carolina. So we had the largest first-year program, or largest first-year launch for Division I programs, and we had a pretty good, successful season. I've been doing this for a really long time. Obviously, this is now starting my 19th season, so this is kind of crazy. I've been doing this for a lot of my life. Just in the room right now, can you guys just raise your hands so I can kind of gauge who I'm speaking to? So, how many are middle school coaches, like coaches middle school? Okay. Do it for the love, it's not a big check, right? How many high school coaches, like JV? Okay. Any just club coaches, like I just coach club lacrosse? Okay, great. So obviously there's a wide range of coaches in this room. So I'm going to try to touch a lot on different things that maybe can help you. Okay, so we're going to talk about offense. Kind of give you a little bit of history from my coaching standpoint. I was an assistant coach for a very long time for a player at the University of Maryland, which I feel like that's like the coaching lineage in college lacrosse. And she was an offensive coach, and I got to learn from her. And when I finally became my own head coach, the first thing I did is I looked in the record books and said, wow, look at all these goals that were scored. Look at all the offense that happened, you know? I said, you know what? I'm going to break all these records. Don't ever do that. This isn't the sport book. It's not like BCS football. If you put 33 goals up on the team, they will just bash you on every internet forum in the world, and that's happened to me. Because, you know, I'm one of those guys who, you know, I'm super energetic. I have, you know, a lot of energy. I'm extremely passionate. How many of you guys are coaches who like to give directions loudly? That's what I like to say. You guys like to give directions loudly. I like to give directions loudly. I'm always talking to my team. And I have to tell my kids that, you know, it's not the fact that I'm yelling at you. If I'm not saying anything to you, you have way more to worry about. if I'm telling you, giving you direction. So giving you kind of my history, that's, you know, I thought offense, let's be able to make it as